Captain Nina Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Earth warship Vengeance, watching the alien space station grow larger on her screens. The station was a Zorvac military outpost in the Kepler system, home to a garrison of 5,000 alien soldiers and the regional command center for 3-star systems. All ships report ready, announced Lieutenant Cole Barnes from the communications station. Nina looked at the tactical display showing her fleet. 30 ships, each one carrying human crews who had watched Jake Morrison die on live broadcast, each ship painted with the same message on its hull. Remember Morrison. This is for Jake, Nina said quietly, then raised her voice. All ships, begin the attack. The human fleet moved with precision that surprised the Zorvac defenders. Instead of charging straight at the station like honorable warriors, the human ships split up and attacked from 12 different directions. Their weapons were different, too. Not the massive energy cannons that alien fleets used, but smaller, faster projectiles that struck with devastating accuracy. On the station, Commander Gorth watched his defense screens with growing confusion. The human ships were too small and too fast. His weapons kept missing their targets, while human missiles slipped through his shields and struck critical systems. "How are they doing this?" Gorth roared at his tactical officer. "Their ships are using our own sensor data against us," the officer replied, his voice shaking. "They know exactly how our targeting systems work." Nina smiled grimly as she watched alien weapons fire uselessly at empty space. Humanity had been studying Council technology for decades, ever since the first crashed alien scout ship. They knew every weakness, every blind spot, every way to turn alien systems against themselves. "Target their command center," Nina ordered, "and broadcast the message." On every communication channel in the system, Jake Morrison's voice began playing. His final words to the Council: "You have no idea what you just unleashed." Then came President Carter's declaration of war, followed by a simple statement: "This is what happens when you murder human diplomats." The Zorvac station's command center exploded in a ball of fire. Secondary explosions ripped through the station as human weapons found ammunition storage areas and power systems. Within 10 minutes of the attack beginning, the station was a burning wreck. But Nina wasn't done. "Deploy the boarding teams." Captain Steve Walsh led 50 human Marines onto the dying station. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, using the station's own ventilation systems and maintenance tunnels to avoid the surviving defenders. When they did encounter Zorvac soldiers, the aliens found themselves facing enemies who had studied their every weakness. Steve's team reached the station's main communication hub just as the surviving Zorvac officers were trying to send a distress call. The humans burst through the doors with weapons drawn. "Nobody move," Steve ordered in perfect Zorvac language. The alien officers stared in shock. Not only had the humans learned their language, but this particular human was speaking with the accent of a high-ranking military commander. "You," Steve pointed at the senior Zorvac officer, "are going to send a message to your fleet." "I will never," the officer began. Steve cut him off. "You will, because if you don't, I'll space every civilian on this station, and if you try to warn them, I'll do it anyway and make sure everyone knows it was your fault." The Zorvac officer's face went pale. His species prided themselves on honor and protecting the weak. The thought of civilians dying because of his actions was worse than death. "What do you want me to say?" he asked quietly. "Tell them that humanity has declared war on the Galactic Council," Steve replied. "Tell them that this attack is just the beginning, and tell them that anyone who wants to surrender should do it now, while we're still accepting prisoners." The message went out on all Zorvac military frequencies. Within hours, it was being broadcast across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos was leading a different kind of attack on the far side of Council space. Her target was a Nethran trade station that served as a major economic hub for the region. Unlike the military assault on the Zorvac outpost, Maria's attack was surgical and precise. Her ships disabled the station's defenses without destroying them, then boarded the facility with minimal casualties. "Attention, Nethran personnel," Maria announced over the station's communication system. "This facility is now under human control. All civilians are to report to designated safe areas. All military personnel are to surrender their weapons." The Nethran, being traitors rather than warriors, offered little resistance. But Maria had a different kind of demonstration in mind. "Bring me your station commander," she ordered. The Nethran commander was a tall, spider-like being with silver skin and multiple arms. It approached Maria with obvious fear. "Please," the commander said, "we are civilians. We have no part in the Council's military operations." "You voted to execute our ambassador," Maria replied coldly. "That makes you part of this war." She gestured to her soldiers who began setting up recording equipment. "You're going to make a statement," Maria told the commander. "You're going to explain to the galaxy that the Nethran Consortium participated in the murder of a human diplomat, and that you're now paying the price for that decision." The recording was broadcast throughout Nethran space within the hour. It showed the wealthy traders who controlled much of the galaxy's economy reduced to prisoners of a species they had considered primitive. But the most devastating attack came from Colonel Pete Jackson, whose target was not a military base or trade station, but a diplomatic facility. Pete's ships surrounded the Council embassy in the Vega system, where representatives from all 12 Council species worked together on various galactic issues. It was supposed to be neutral territory, protected by ancient treaties. "Embassy staff," Pete broadcast, "you have 5 minutes to evacuate all non-essential personnel. After that, anyone remaining will be considered a military target." The embassy's emergency evacuation began immediately. Alien diplomats and their families rushed to escape pods while Pete's ships waited patiently. When the 5 minutes were up, Pete's forces moved in. They captured the remaining embassy staff without firing a shot, then began broadcasting something that shocked the entire galaxy. The humans had brought their own diplomatic staff. Ambassador Susan Kelly, Jake Morrison's deputy, stood in the embassy's main conference room. She had been on Earth when Jake was murdered, and now she was here to deliver humanity's response. "Citizens of the galaxy," Susan began, "I am Ambassador Susan Kelly of the United Earth Government. I stand in what was the Galactic Council Embassy in the Vega system. This facility is now the Embassy of the Terran Alliance." She gestured to the captured alien diplomats, who stood under guard behind her. "These beings represent governments that participated in the murder of Ambassador Jake Morrison. They will be held as prisoners of war until their governments agree to surrender the individuals responsible for his death." The broadcast showed human soldiers raising Earth's flag over the embassy building. "Let this serve as notice to all species in the galaxy," Susan continued. "The age of Council tyranny is ending. Any species that wishes to join the fight for freedom is welcome to contact us at this location. Any species that continues to support the Council will be treated as an enemy of humanity and of liberty itself." Within 24 hours of the first attacks, the entire galaxy was talking about humanity's declaration of war. 3 major Council installations had been captured or destroyed. Hundreds of Council personnel were dead or captured, and the humans had done it all with minimal losses. But the most important victory was psychological. The Galactic Council which had ruled through fear and intimidation for thousands of years, had been humiliated by a species they considered primitive. Their aura of invincibility was shattered. Emergency meetings were called on every council world. Military commanders who had been lounging in comfortable positions suddenly found themselves scrambling to respond to an enemy they didn't understand. And across the galaxy, young species that had been cowering under council rule began to whisper among themselves. If the humans could strike back like this, maybe the council wasn't as powerful as everyone thought. Maybe it was time to fight back. The war had begun, and humanity had drawn first blood. But more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that the council could be beaten. Jake Morrison's death had been meant to frighten the galaxy into submission. Instead, it had lit a fire that was beginning to spread from star to star. The council had created their own worst nightmare, a united humanity, with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. President Lisa Carter stood in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by screens showing the faces of world leaders from every nation on Earth. The emergency session had been called within minutes of Jake Morrison's execution. Now, 6 hours later, the initial shock was giving way to cold determination. "The vote is unanimous," Carter announced, looking at each face on the screens. "Every nation on Earth supports the declaration of war against the Galactic Council." Admiral Ryan Torres spread a holographic map of local space above the conference table. Red dots marked known alien positions. Blue dots showed human installations. The red outnumbered the blue by hundreds to one. "Madam President," said the Prime Minister of Britain, "we need to consider the reality of our situation. The aliens have ships we can't match, weapons we don't understand, and numbers that dwarf our entire fleet." Carter nodded grimly. "Which is exactly why we're not going to fight them the way they expect." She turned to Admiral Torres. "Ryan, show them Project Lighthouse." Torres pressed several buttons on his control panel. The screens around the room shifted to show a new signal, one that was broadcasting from hidden transmitters throughout human space. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carter said, "we're about to send a message to every inhabited world in the galaxy." The transmission began with Jake Morrison's final words, recorded from the Council's own broadcast. His voice echoed clearly. "You have no idea what you just unleashed." Then Carter's face appeared on the transmission. She wore the formal blue uniform of Earth's Planetary Defense Force, and her expression was calm but deadly serious. "Citizens of the galaxy," Carter began, "my name is Lisa Carter, President of the United Earth Government. 6 hours ago, you witnessed the murder of our ambassador, Jake Morrison, by the Galactic Council." She paused, letting her words sink in across thousands of worlds. Ambassador Morrison went to the Council station carrying humanity's formal application for peaceful membership in the galactic community. He brought proof of our achievements, our values, and our desire for friendship. The Council's response was to execute him for the crime of believing his species deserved equality. The transmission cut to footage of Council ships around their station, then to images of the massive weapons they carried. The Council believes this display of power will frighten humanity into submission. They believe we will accept our place as slaves rather than risk their anger. They are wrong. Carter's voice grew harder. "I hereby declare that the United Earth Government is in a state of war with the Galactic Council and every species that participated in the murder of our ambassador. This war will continue until Jake Morrison's killers are brought to justice and the Council's tyranny is ended. Around the Situation Room, world leaders watched their screens as the transmission continued. Carter had insisted on speaking for all of humanity, and they had agreed. This was not a time for political divisions. The Council assumes we are helpless because we control only one star system, Carter continued. They assume we are primitive because our technology appears crude compared to theirs. These assumptions will prove fatal. The transmission now showed images that made several world leaders gasp. Massive construction projects in the asteroid belt, underground facilities on Mars, orbital platforms around Jupiter and Saturn. All of it had been hidden until now. For 50 years, since our first contact with alien visitors, humanity has been preparing for the possibility that friendship might not be enough. While we sent ambassadors to seek peace, we also built defenses to ensure survival. The images showed sleek warships, unlike anything in the public records. Their design was clearly human, but their size and apparent capabilities were impressive, even compared to alien vessels. The Council wanted to make an example of Ambassador Morrison. They wanted to show the galaxy what happens to species that dare to dream of equality. Now humanity will show the galaxy what happens when you murder our diplomats. Carter leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. To the members of the Galactic Council, Jake Morrison was a good man who believed in peace. His blood is on your hands. You will answer for his death. To the other species of the galaxy, you have seen how the Council treats those who seek equality. You have seen their idea of justice. If you are tired of living under their rule, if you dream of freedom, then know that humanity will fight not just for ourselves, but for every being who believes in liberty. And to any human listening to this message, we are at war, not by choice, but by necessity. The enemy is powerful, but they have made one critical mistake. They have united every human being on Earth and throughout our colonies in a single purpose. The transmission showed the face of Jake Morrison one more time, frozen in his final moment of defiance. Jake Morrison died believing in the possibility of peace. His sacrifice will not be forgotten, and it will not be in vain. The Galactic Council wanted to send a message. Consider it received. Carter stood up, her uniform crisp and her bearing military straight. This is our declaration. Humanity is at war. We will show no mercy to those who show no mercy. We will give no quarter to those who murder diplomats. And we will not stop until justice is served. The transmission ended. In the Situation Room, silence stretched for long moments. Finally, the president of China spoke up. Lisa, are we really ready for this? Carter turned to Admiral Torres, who activated another set of displays. These showed production figures, troop numbers, and weapons stockpiles that had been classified until this moment. We've been building toward this possibility for decades, Torres explained. Every space elevator, every asteroid mining operation, every research station has had a secondary military purpose. We have 300 combat-ready ships with more coming off the production lines every week. What about personnel? Asked the Prime Minister of India. Every space worker, every asteroid miner, every research scientist has been cross-trained in military operations, Torres replied. We have over 2 million people in space right now, and all of them are ready to fight. The president of Russia looked skeptical. That's still not enough to fight the entire galaxy. We're not planning to fight the entire galaxy, Carter said. We're planning to destroy the Galactic Council. There's a difference. She activated another display, showing detailed intelligence files on each council member species. While we've been sending peace delegations, we've also been studying our potential enemies. We know their biology, their psychology, their military capabilities, and their weaknesses. The Council thinks they're dealing with naive humans who just learned to leave their planet. They're about to discover they're facing a species that has been preparing for war since before most of them were born. Dr. Alex Chen, head of Earth's Xenobiology Institute, stepped forward. The Council species are individually powerful, but they've grown complacent. They haven't fought a real war in centuries. They rely on intimidation and overwhelming force because they've forgotten how to fight an enemy that fights back. And humanity? Asked the Chancellor of Germany. Chen smiled grimly. Humanity has never stopped fighting. We've just been fighting each other instead of them. Until now. Carter looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. The die is cast. Jake Morrison is dead, and we are at war. The only question now is whether we're going to win it. Admiral Torres pulled up a star chart showing the nearest Council territories. Our first targets are here, he said, pointing to a cluster of systems. Not military installations. Those are too well defended. We're going after their leadership, their communications, and their confidence. When do we begin? Asked the president of Brazil. Carter checked her watch. Captain Nina Rodriguez launched the first strike force 20 minutes ago. By the time this meeting ends, the war will have already begun. Across Earth, similar meetings were taking place in every capital, every military base, every command center. Humanity was mobilizing for the greatest conflict in its history. And in space, moving silently through the darkness between stars, 300 human warships carried Jake Morrison's final words toward their targets. You have no idea what you just unleashed. The Galactic Council was about to find out exactly what an angry humanity was capable of. The Council chamber transformed before Jake's eyes. The walls became transparent, revealing space outside and the thousands of ships that surrounded the station. Lights came on everywhere, turning the chamber into a stage visible across the galaxy. Commander. Thex raised one massive arm, and a floating device appeared next to him. It looked like a metal sphere covered in glowing symbols. Citizens of the galaxy, his voice boomed through speakers that carried his words to every corner of known space. Today we address a growing problem. Jake felt his stomach turn cold. This wasn't just a rejection of humanity's application. This was something much worse. Young species throughout the galaxy have begun to think they can simply demand equality with their betters, Thex continued. They send ambassadors with requests for membership, as if they have the right to sit beside us. This arrogance must be stopped. The other council members stood from their seats. Representative Clack's metallic voice joined Thex's. The human species has shown particular boldness in this regard. They believe their crude technology and primitive culture make them worthy of our attention. Jake stepped forward. This is a diplomatic mission. I have immunity under galactic law. Whatever grievances you have with humanity can be discussed through proper channels. Thex laughed, a sound like breaking stone. Diplomatic immunity applies. To equals, human. Slaves do not receive diplomatic immunity. We are not your slaves, Jake said firmly. Not yet, agreed Thex. But that can be arranged. However, we have decided on a different course of action. Your death will serve as a more powerful message than your enslavement. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Around the chamber, the other council members began to nod their agreement. This had all been planned before he arrived. The meeting, the questions, the pretense of consideration, it had all been theater. You're going to murder me? Jake asked, his voice steady despite the fear growing in his chest. "We are going to execute a criminal," Thex corrected. "The crime is species presumption, the belief that a primitive race can demand equality with their superiors." Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching him. Some looked eager, others looked bored, as if they were watching a routine procedure. None looked troubled by what was about to happen. "This is being broadcast," Jake realized. "You want everyone to see this." "Every species in the galaxy will watch," confirmed the jellyfish-like being in the glass tank. "They will see what happens to those who reach beyond their station." Jake felt something strange happening inside him. The fear was still there, but it was being pushed aside by something else. Anger. Not just at his own fate, but at what this meant for every other young species trying to find their place in the galaxy. "Before you kill me," Jake said, "I want to say something." "You may speak," Thex allowed, clearly enjoying the moment. Jake looked directly into the main camera that was broadcasting his image across the galaxy. He knew that somewhere on Earth people were watching this. His wife, his children, his friends, his government. They were all seeing him standing here, about to die. "My name is Jake Morrison," he began, his voice clear and strong. "I came here as an ambassador of the human race, seeking peaceful membership in the galactic community. Instead, I found beings who have forgotten what civilization means." Thex started to interrupt, but Jake kept talking. "To the people of Earth, if you're watching this, know that I tried. Know that I believed we could find a place among the stars, through friendship and cooperation. I was wrong." Jake paused, looking around at the council members. "To the other young species who might be watching, remember what you see here today. This is how the Galactic Council treats those who seek equality. This is how they respond to offers of friendship." Commander Thex stepped closer. "Enough speeches, human." Jake turned to face him directly. "You think killing me will make humanity submit. You think this display of power will frighten us into obedience. You're wrong about that too. We shall see," Thex said, raising his arm. A weapon appeared in his massive hand, a glowing rod that hummed with deadly energy. "You have no idea what you're unleashing," Jake said, his voice carrying across the galaxy through the broadcast. "Humans don't respond to threats the way you think we do. We don't bow down to bullies. We don't forget those who wrong us." The weapon in Thex's hand began to glow brighter. "And we don't forgive those who murder our diplomats," Jake finished. Thex fired. The energy blast hit Jake square in the chest. For a moment, his body glowed with the same terrible light as the weapon. Then he simply vanished, turned to atoms, and scattered into space. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the station's machinery. Where Jake Morrison had stood, there was nothing but empty air. Commander Thex turned to address the cameras again. "Let this be a lesson to all species who think they can demand what they have not earned. The Galactic Council maintains order through strength. Challenge that order and face the consequences." The broadcast ended. The chamber's walls returned to their normal opacity. The council members began filing out, already discussing other business. None of them seemed particularly concerned about what they had just done. To them, it was just another day, another problem solved through the application of superior force. But across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds and aboard countless ships, beings were talking about what they had witnessed. Many were frightened, as the council had intended. But others were angry. Young species that had been considering approaches to the council now reconsidered. Older species that had grown tired of council domination began to whisper about alternatives, and on a small blue planet in a distant arm of the galaxy, the entire human race had just watched their ambassador murdered in cold blood. In the emergency session of the Global Defense Council, President Lisa Carter stood before screens showing the faces of every world leader. The room was dead silent as they all processed what they had seen. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Carter said finally, her voice tight with controlled fury, "we are at war." Admiral Ryan Torres, head of Earth's Space Defense Force, leaned forward in his chair. "Madam President, with respect, we can't fight the entire Galactic Council. They have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers." "Then we'd better start building more ships," Carter replied, "and we'd better hope that Jake was right about one thing." "What's that?" Torres asked. Carter's eyes were hard as steel as she answered, "That they have no idea what they just unleashed." Across Earth, emergency broadcasts began going out. Military reserves were called up. Shipyards went to full production. Research facilities that had been working on peaceful projects suddenly shifted to weapons development. And in the depths of space, automated monitoring stations began sending signals back to Earth. The signals reported on alien ship movements, alien communications, alien weaknesses. For decades, while humanity had been sending ambassadors and peace offerings to the galaxy, they had also been watching and learning and preparing for the day when friendship failed. That day had just arrived. Jake Morrison was dead, but his final words echoed across the human sphere. "You have no idea what you just unleashed." The Galactic Council was about to find out exactly what those words meant. Jake Morrison stood at the window of his transport ship, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. The Galactic Council station was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth. It spun slowly in the darkness of space, its lights twinkling like stars. This was humanity's chance to join the galactic community. Jake had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. He was Earth's third ambassador to try for membership in the Galactic Council. The first 2 had been sent home with harsh rejections. The Council had called humans too young and not ready. But Jake carried new information, new proof that humanity deserved a place among the stars. The transport ship docked with a soft thud. Jake straightened his best diplomatic uniform and picked up his briefcase. Inside were documents showing human achievements in science, art, medicine, and space travel. He had videos of human cities, human music, and human children playing in parks. He wanted to show the aliens that humans were not just another primitive species. The airlock opened with a hiss. Jake stepped into the station and immediately felt smaller. The corridors were built for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling stretched high above his head, and the walls curved away into darkness. Strange smells filled the air, some sweet, some sharp, all alien. A tall, blue-skinned creature approached him. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. "Ambassador Morrison," it said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am Assistant Coordinator Vex. The Council will see you in 1 hour." Jake followed. Vex through winding corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. He saw creatures that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of living crystal, and some that floated in the air without any visible means of support. All of them stopped to stare at the human as he passed. The waiting room was a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. Jake sat on a bench that was too large for him and reviewed his notes one last time. He had memorized every fact, every argument, every reason why humanity should be accepted into the galactic community. When the hour passed, Vex returned. "The council is ready," it announced. The council chamber was even more impressive than the waiting room. 12 massive seats arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different alien species. In the center was a small platform where Jake would make his presentation. As Jake walked to the platform, he studied the council members. The largest seat held a creature that looked like a combination of a rhinoceros and a dragon. Its scales were black and scarred, and its eyes burned red. This was Commander Thex of the Zorvac Empire, the military power that dominated the council. To Thex's right sat a being that resembled a giant spider made of silver metal. This was Representative Clack of the Nethrin Consortium, the traders who controlled most of the galaxy's economy. The other council members were equally impressive and equally alien. "Human," Commander Thex's voice boomed through the chamber, "you may speak." Jake stepped forward and began his presentation. He spoke clearly and calmly, explaining humanity's rapid development over the past century. He showed them videos of human cities, human art, and human achievements in space. He talked about human values like cooperation, creativity, and the desire to explore and learn. The council members listened in silence, but Jake could see their expressions. Some looked bored, others looked amused, a few looked openly hostile. When Jake finished, Commander Thex leaned forward. "Impressive," he said, but his tone suggested he was not impressed at all. "Tell me, human, how many star systems does your species control?" "One," Jake replied honestly, "but we have begun expanding to nearby systems." "One system," Thex repeated, and several council members made sounds that might have been laughter. "We control hundreds. The Nethrin control thousands. What makes you think you belong here with us?" "Because we have something to offer," Jake said firmly. "Humans are problem solvers. We adapt quickly. We learn fast. We could contribute to the Council's goals of peace and prosperity." Representative Clack spoke up, its metallic voice ringing through the chamber. "Peace and prosperity for whom, little human? You speak of your values, but what wealth do you bring? What resources? What trade routes?" "We bring ourselves," Jake answered. "Our ideas, our creativity, our willingness to work together." More sounds of alien laughter filled the chamber. Commander Thex stood up, his massive form casting a shadow over Jake. "You misunderstand your position, human. We do not need your ideas. We do not need your creativity. If we wanted anything from your species, we would simply take it." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his voice steady. "With respect, Commander, that is not how civilized beings behave. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to prosper together." "Civilized?" Thex's laugh was like the roar of an angry beast. "You think we are equals, don't you? You think you can just walk in here and demand a seat at our table?" "I'm asking for the chance to earn that seat," Jake said. "Asking?" Another council member spoke up. This one looked like a collection of floating jellyfish inside a glass tank. "You are in no position to ask for anything. Your species has one small planet and a few crude ships. We have armies that could turn your world to ash in minutes." Jake's heart was beating faster now, but his training kept him calm. "If you wanted to destroy us, you would have done it already. You must see some value in humanity, or you wouldn't have agreed to this meeting." Commander Thex stepped down from his platform and walked toward Jake. Each step shook the floor. "You are right about one thing, human. We do see value in your species, but not as equals, as servants, as workers, as soldiers to fight our wars. That's not what we're offering, Jake said firmly. It's not what you're offering, Thex agreed, stopping just in front of the human ambassador. It's what we're taking. The chamber fell silent. Jake looked around at the 12 council members and saw no sympathy in any of their faces. He had come here hoping for friendship and had walked into a trap. Your species has shown remarkable arrogance, Thex continued. You think, because you have learned to leave your planet, you are ready to join us as equals. This cannot be allowed to stand. Other young species are watching. They need to see what happens when primitives reach too high. Jake straightened his shoulders and looked Thex directly in the eyes. And they'll also see what happens when civilized beings abandon their principles. Thex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. There are no witnesses here, human. And there will be no message sent back to your world. You came here asking to join us. Instead, you will serve as an example. The other council members began to murmur among themselves in alien languages. Jake didn't need a translator to understand what they were discussing. His mission had failed, and worse, he might not survive to report that failure to Earth. But Jake Morrison was not just a diplomat. He was a human being, and humans did not give up easily. He stood straight and proud as the council prepared to pass judgment on him and his entire species. Whatever you decide to do, Jake said clearly, remember that humans have long memories. We don't forget those who help us, and we don't forget those who harm us. Commander Thex's smile grew wider and more terrible. We're counting on it, human. Admiral Ryan Torres stood in the same chamber where Jake Morrison had been executed 3 years ago. The Galactic Council station orbited Proxima Centauri just as it had then, but everything else had changed. Coalition forces controlled the station. Coalition flags hung where council banners once did, and in the center of the chamber, 12 beings sat in chains where the council members had once sat in judgment. Commander Thex was among them, his proud warrior's bearing broken by defeat and capture. The other surviving council leaders sat beside him, those who hadn't died in the final battle or been killed by their own people during the revolution that followed. The court is now in session, announced Judge Elena Vasquez, formerly of the Earth Supreme Court, now serving as Chief Justice of the Coalition War Crimes Tribunal. Ryan watched from the gallery as the trial he had dreamed of for 3 years finally began. Behind him sat representatives from every species in the coalition, the galaxy come to witness justice. The defendants stand accused of crimes against sentient life, Judge Vasquez continued, including the unlawful execution of Ambassador Jake Morrison of Earth, the enslavement of entire species, and the systematic oppression of free peoples throughout the galaxy. Ryan's mind went back to that terrible day when he had watched Jake die on live broadcast. He remembered the fury, the desperation, the certainty that humanity was about to be crushed by forces beyond their understanding. None of them had imagined it would end like this. How do the defendants plead? Judge Vasquez asked. One by one, the former council leaders were asked to respond. Most remained silent or claimed they were following orders. But when it came to Thex's turn, the former Zorvac commander struggled to his feet. I plead not guilty, Thex declared, his voice still carrying traces of his old arrogance. We did what was necessary to maintain order in the galaxy. Judge Vasquez looked at him calmly. Commander Thex, you personally executed Ambassador Morrison. This was recorded and broadcast throughout the galaxy. How do you justify this action? The human was guilty of species presumption, Thex replied, His people dared to demand equality with their betters. Such arrogance could not be allowed to spread. A murmur ran through the gallery. Even now, facing execution himself, Thex couldn't understand what he had done wrong. "So you believed that Ambassador Morrison's species made him unworthy of life?" Judge Vasquez asked. "I believed that his species made him unworthy of equality," Thex corrected. "The execution was meant to be instructive, not personal." Ryan closed his eyes, remembering Jake's final words. "You have no idea what you just unleashed." Thex still didn't understand that those words had been a prophecy. The trial lasted 3 days. Witnesses testified about Council atrocities throughout the galaxy. Evidence was presented of systematic oppression, slavery, and genocide. The defendants were given every opportunity to defend themselves or show remorse. None of them did. On the final day, Judge Vasquez delivered the verdict. "This court finds all defendants guilty of crimes against sentient life," she announced. "The evidence shows a pattern of deliberate cruelty and oppression that lasted for millennia. The execution of Ambassador Morrison was not an isolated incident, but part of a systematic campaign to maintain power through terror." She paused, looking at each defendant in turn. "However, this court recognizes that the greatest crime was not just the murder of one human, but the message that murder was meant to send. You wanted to show the galaxy that no species could challenge your authority. You wanted to crush the dreams of freedom that burn in every sentient heart." Ryan found himself thinking about the billions of beings across the galaxy who had suffered under Council rule. Jake's death had been terrible, but it had also been the spark that lit a fire of rebellion in every oppressed world. "The sentence," Judge Vasquez continued, "is death. But not death as you gave it to Ambassador Morrison, not murder dressed up as justice. You will be executed according to the laws of the Coalition, with all the rights and protections you denied to your victims." Thex laughed bitterly. "And you think this makes you better than us?" "Yes," Judge Vasquez replied simply. "It does." The executions were scheduled for the following day, to be carried out in the same chamber where Jake had died. Ryan wasn't sure. He wanted to watch, but he felt he owed it to Jake's memory to be there. When the moment came, Ryan stood in the gallery alongside President Carter, Admiral Webb, Captain Rodriguez, and dozens of other officers who had fought in the war. Below them, the 12 condemned council leaders were brought forward. Unlike Jake's execution, this was not a spectacle. There were no jeering crowds, no celebration of death. The Coalition had learned to distinguish between justice and revenge. "Chastardis, any of the condemned wish to make a statement?" Judge Vasquez asked. Most remained silent, but Thex stepped forward one last time. "You think you have won," he said, addressing the gallery. "You think you have created something better than what we built, but you are wrong. Order requires strength. Peace requires someone to enforce it. Without the Council, the galaxy will descend into chaos." President Carter stood up in the gallery. "Commander Thex," she said clearly, "you're right about one thing. Peace does require enforcement, but it requires enforcement of justice, not tyranny. The Coalition will maintain order through law, not fear." Thex shook his head. "You will see. Without us to maintain discipline, your precious alliance will fall apart. Species will turn on each other, just as they always have." "Maybe," Carter admitted. "But at least they'll have the chance to try something better." The executions were carried out quickly and efficiently. 12 lives ended, paying for the crimes of millennia. Ryan felt no satisfaction in watching, only a sense that a chapter in galactic history was finally closing. After it was over, the chamber was converted into something Jake Morrison would have approved of. A meeting hall where representatives from dozens of species could come together as equals to discuss the future of the galaxy. President Carter, now serving as the first elected leader of the Coalition Council, stood at the podium where Thex had once pronounced Jake's death sentence. "The Galactic Council is dead," she announced to the assembled representatives. "In its place, we establish the Free Worlds Coalition, based on the principle that all sentient species are created equal and deserve the right to determine their own destiny." Ryan watched from the gallery as beings who had once been enemies voted together on the new government structure. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, disagreements, and cultural misunderstandings, but they were working together, something the old council had never allowed. "There will be challenges ahead," Carter continued. "Some species will choose isolation over cooperation. Some will try to rebuild the old system of oppression. But we have proven that tyranny can be defeated when free beings stand together." She paused, looking up at a new addition to the chamber. A memorial plaque dedicated to Jake Morrison and all the other victims of council oppression. Ambassador Morrison came here 3 years ago, carrying humanity's dream of joining the galactic community as equals, Carter said. His killers thought his death would end that dream. Instead, it made the dream a reality for every species in the galaxy. The ceremony concluded with the raising of the coalition flag, not a symbol of any single species, but a design that incorporated elements from every member world. It was complex and sometimes clashing, but it worked as a whole, just like the coalition itself. Later, Ryan stood alone in the chamber looking up at Jake's memorial plaque. The inscription was simple. Ambassador Jake Morrison. He came in peace, seeking friendship. His death taught the galaxy that all beings deserve freedom. "We did it, Jake," Ryan said quietly. "It took 3 years and cost millions of lives, but we did it. The galaxy is free." He thought about all the battles, all the sacrifices, all the impossible victories that had led to this moment. Humanity had gone from a single-planet species to the leaders of a galactic alliance. They had transformed from peace-seekers to warriors to peacemakers. But the greatest transformation had been in the galaxy itself. For the first time in recorded history, multiple species were working together as equals, united not by conquest, but by shared values. Outside the station's windows, Ryan could see ships from dozens of worlds flying in formation. The coalition fleet that now protected the free worlds from any who would try to restore the old order. It was the most powerful military force in galactic history, but it served justice rather than tyranny. Jake Morrison had died believing in the possibility of peace among the stars. His sacrifice had made that peace not just possible, but real. The war was over. The galaxy was free. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, new species were looking up at the stars and dreaming of the day they too might join the community of free worlds. Jake's dream lived on, carried forward by every being who believed that all sentient life deserved dignity, respect, and the chance to reach for the stars. The age of the Galactic Council was finished. The age of the Free Worlds Coalition had begun, and it all started with one human diplomat who refused to bow down to those who called themselves his betters. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the liberated Council Dreadnought Freedom's call, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history moved into position around Earth. 6,000 ships from 47 different species, all united under the banner of the Free Worlds Coalition. Status report from all task forces, Marcus ordered. Captain Lisa Martinez, his tactical officer, consulted her displays. Task Force Alpha is in position above Earth's North Pole. Task Force Beta has taken station near Luna. Task Force Gamma is moving to cut off the Council's escape route. Marcus nodded, studying the holographic battle display. The Council fleet was trapped in Earth's solar system, caught between the planet's defenses and the Coalition forces. For the first time in the war, humanity and its allies had numerical superiority. Incoming transmission from Admiral Bell reported Communications Officer Chris Roberts. Katie Bell's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Marcus could see the controlled chaos of Luna Base's command center. "Marcus, it's good to see you," Katie said with obvious relief. "What's your status?" "All Coalition forces are in position," Marcus replied. "We have representatives from the Aquari Republic, the Centauri Alliance, the Rigel Federation, and 34 other liberated systems. Every ship out here has a score to settle with the Council." "What about the Council fleet?" Marcus pulled up tactical data on his display. "They're trying to break out toward the Proxima Centauri jump point, but we've got them surrounded. Commander Thex is trapped, and he knows it." As if summoned by his words, Thex's image appeared on both ships' main screens. The Zorvac commander looked older than he had 2 years ago, his scales dulled and his red eyes filled with desperate fury. "This changes nothing," Thex roared. "You may have gathered more ships, but you are still primitives fighting your betters." Marcus and Katie exchanged glances. Even now, facing overwhelming odds, the Council still couldn't accept that they had been defeated by supposedly inferior species. "Thex," Marcus said calmly, "you're outnumbered 3-1. Your empire is collapsing. Your own people are turning against you. It's over." "It is not over until every human is dead," Thex snarled. "You killed Jake Morrison for one simple reason: to show the galaxy that no one could challenge your authority. You failed." Katie leaned forward on her screen. "Actually, Thex, we have something to show you." The transmission split to show a new feed. Live images from the Council's former capital world. Marcus smiled as he watched Zorvac civilians pulling down statues of their former leaders while human and allied peacekeepers maintained order. "Your homeworld declared independence 3 hours ago," Katie explained. "Your own people voted to join the coalition rather than continue supporting your war." Thex's face went through a series of expressions: shock, rage, and finally something that might have been despair. "Impossible," he whispered. "The Zorvac High Council sent us a message," Marcus added. "They're offering to turn you over to us for trial in exchange for a peace treaty." My own people. Thex seemed to age before their eyes. "Your own people are tired of dying for your pride," Katie said firmly. "The war is over, Thex. The only question now is how many more beings have to die before you accept it." The transmission from Thex cut off abruptly. "He's not going to surrender," Marcus observed. "No," Katie agreed. "He'll fight to the last ship rather than face trial for Jake's murder." Marcus turned to his tactical officer. "Lisa, what's the Council fleet doing?" "They're forming up for a final assault on Earth," Martinez replied. "It looks like they're planning to take as many of us with them as possible." "Admiral Webb," came a new voice over the comm. Marcus turned to see the face of Ambassador Reef of the Aquari Republic on his secondary screen. "Ambassador," Marcus acknowledged. "My people have a request," Reef said, his large eyes serious. We want the honor of leading the final assault. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's going to be dangerous, Ambassador. The Council fleet is desperate now. They'll fight like cornered animals. Which is exactly why we should lead, Reef replied. The Aquari were the first to join humanity's cause. We have lost more people to Council oppression than any other species except humans themselves. We have earned the right to be at the front when freedom finally wins. Before Marcus could respond, his comm system lit up with similar requests from other coalition commanders. The Centauri wanted to lead the assault. So did the Rigel Federation, the Tau Ceti Republic, and a dozen other species. It seems everyone wants to be first in line, Captain Martinez observed. Marcus made a decision that would be remembered throughout galactic history. All task force commanders form up for simultaneous assault. No one leads, no one follows. We all go in together. Sir? Martinez looked confused. The Council ruled through division, Marcus explained. They kept species separate, made them compete against each other for scraps of favor. That's how they maintained control for so long. He activated the fleet-wide communication system so his words would reach every ship in the coalition force. Today we show the galaxy what unity looks like. Not human ships or Aquari ships or Centauri ships, coalition ships, fighting as one people for one cause. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of voices speaking dozens of languages, all cheering the same message. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were truly fighting together as equals. All ships, Marcus announced, begin final approach. Remember, we're not here for conquest or revenge. We're here to end tyranny and bring justice to Jake Morrison's killers. The coalition fleet moved forward like a living thing, ships from dozens of worlds flying in perfect formation. At the center flew the human vessels, including Earth's newest and most powerful ship, the UES Jake Morrison, built specifically for this battle. Captain Nina Rodriguez, the same officer who had led humanity's first strike 2 years ago, commanded the Jake Morrison. Her voice came over the fleet comm as they approached the enemy. For everyone listening across the galaxy, Nina announced, "This is Captain Rodriguez aboard the Earthship Jake Morrison. We are about to engage the forces responsible for the murder of our ambassador. We fight not just for humanity, but for every species that believes in freedom." The Council fleet came forward to meet them, but Marcus could see their formation was ragged. These were not the confident warriors who had murdered Jake Morrison. These were desperate beings making a final stand. The battle was joined above Earth's blue skies, visible to everyone on the planet below. But this was not like the earlier fighting. This was not guerrilla warfare or surprise attacks. This was a pitched battle between two galactic powers, and the outcome would determine the future of civilization. Council ships fought with the fury of the doomed, but they were overwhelmed by coalition forces that fought with the strength of the righteous. Species that had been enemies for millennia worked together seamlessly, their hatred of the Council stronger than their ancient feuds. Council center formation is breaking, reported Martinez. They're falling back on their command ship. Marcus could see it on his display. A massive Zorvac dreadnought at the heart of the enemy fleet, surrounded by the last loyal ships of the dying empire. "That's Thex's flagship," Katie's voice came over the comm from Luna Base. "The Eternal Dominion." Then, that's where we end this, Marcus decided. "All ships, converge on the enemy flagship. It's time to bring Jake Morrison's killer to justice." The coalition fleet turned as one toward the Eternal Dominion. The final phase of the battle was about to begin, and with it, the final judgment on the Galactic Council's crimes. Above Earth, the planet where humanity had dreamed of peace among the stars, the dream was finally coming true, but only after paying the terrible price that the Council had demanded. Jake Morrison's sacrifice was about to be vindicated at last. Admiral Katie Bell watched the massive Council fleet approaching Earth through the observation deck of Luna Base. 3,000 ships, representing every species in the Galactic Council, had come to destroy humanity's homeworld. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "They're not taking any chances," said General Tom Brady, standing beside her. His weathered face showed no fear, only grim determination. Katie nodded, studying the tactical displays. They finally realized we're not going away quietly. 2 years had passed since Jake Morrison's execution. 2 years of humanity striking deeper and deeper into Council territory. 2 years of alien species joining the human cause. 2 years of the Council's authority crumbling system by system. Now they had come to end it where it started. Status. "Report," Katie ordered as they walked onto Luna Base's command center. "Perimeter defenses are online," reported Captain Dan Foster. "All asteroid forts are armed and ready. The Mars shipyards have launched their last batch of defenders." Katie looked at the holographic display showing Earth's solar system. It looked nothing like the peaceful system the Council had dismissed 2 years ago. Every asteroid had been converted into a weapons platform. The space between planets was filled with minefields and automated defense drones. Even the gas giants had been turned into fortresses, their moons bristling with weapons. "How many ships do we have?" Katie asked. "In the system?" 800. "Of our own, plus 400 allied vessels," Tom replied. "But that's not counting the special projects." Katie smiled grimly. The special projects were humanity's answer to being outnumbered. If you couldn't match the enemy's numbers, you made each of your weapons count for more. "Incoming transmission from the Council fleet," reported Communications Officer Amy White. The main screen lit up with the image of Commander Thex, the Zorvac leader who had personally executed Jake Morrison. His scarred face filled the display, and his red eyes burned with hatred. "Humans," Thex's voice boomed through the command center, "your rebellion ends today. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." Katie stepped forward so the Council fleet could see her. "Commander Thex, I remember you. You're the one who murdered our ambassador." "I am the one who executed a criminal," Thex corrected. "And I am the one who will execute your entire species for the crime of resisting your betters." "Our betters?" Katie laughed, a sound without humor. "Look around you, Thex. Half the galaxy has joined our cause. Your empire is falling apart, and you're so desperate you had to bring every ship you have just to attack one system." Thex's face darkened with rage. "We will burn your world to ash and scatter your people to the void." "You're welcome to try," Katie replied calmly. "But first, let me show you something." She nodded to Captain Foster, who activated a new display. The screen now showed images from across the galaxy, images that made Thex's eyes widen in shock. Council worlds burning, Council fleets destroyed, Council leaders being led away in chains by their own people, while you've been gathering your forces here, Katie explained. "Our allies have been liberating your remaining territories. As we speak, the Aquari Republic is taking the Vega system. The Centauri Alliance is capturing your shipyards in the Tau Ceti region, and the Free Worlds Coalition is declaring independence from Council rule." The images continued to flash across the screen. alien civilians celebrating in the streets as human and allied forces arrived, council governors fleeing their palaces, ancient symbols of council authority being torn down and replaced with flags of freedom. "Even if you destroy Earth," Katie continued, "you've already lost the war. The galaxy will never accept council rule again." Thex was trembling with fury now. "Then we will make sure there is no galaxy left to rule. All ships, attack! Show no mercy!" The transmission ended, and Katie turned to her command staff. "Well, you heard him. They're not interested in surrender." "All defensive systems report ready," Captain Foster announced. "Allied ships in position," added Amy White. Katie looked out at the approaching enemy fleet and thought about Jake Morrison. He had died believing in peace, but his death had started a war that would either free the galaxy or destroy it. "For Jake," she said quietly, then raised her voice. "All units, engage the enemy." The Battle of Earth began with 3,000 council ships charging toward humanity's homeworld. They expected to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers, just as they had done countless times before. Instead, they flew into the most sophisticated defensive network ever created. The asteroid forts opened fire first. Each one carried weapons that had been designed by humans, but built with captured alien technology. The combination was devastating. Council ships that had been built to intimidate through size found themselves being torn apart by weapons they couldn't even detect. "First wave is taking heavy losses," reported Tom Brady, watching the tactical display. "Their formations are breaking up." But Katie knew this was just the beginning. The Council had brought 3,000 ships for a reason. They could afford to lose a few hundred in the opening assault. "Activate the minefields," she ordered. Space around Earth lit up with explosions as hidden mines detonated among the Council ships. But these weren't ordinary mines. They had been programmed with the tactical knowledge gained from 2 years of fighting alien forces. Each mine knew exactly where to hit each type of ship for maximum damage. "Second wave is stalling," Tom reported. "But the third wave is adjusting their approach. That was the problem with fighting the Council. They might be arrogant and cruel, but they weren't stupid. They learned from their mistakes, even in the middle of a battle." "Time for the special projects," Katie decided. "Activate Pandora." "Captain." Foster's fingers flew over his controls. "Pandora is online." Across the solar system, a new type of weapon came to life. For 2 years, human scientists had been studying captured alien ships not just to understand their technology, but to find ways to turn that technology against itself. Pandora was the result, a computer virus designed specifically for alien systems. Council ships throughout the fleet suddenly found their own computers turning against them. Weapon systems fired at random targets. Navigation computers sent ships crashing into each other. Life support systems began shutting down. "Chaos in the enemy fleet," Amy reported, her voice excited. "They're firing on each other." But Katie knew Pandora wouldn't last long. Alien technicians would figure out how to counter it eventually. They needed to do as much damage as possible while they had the chance. "Launch the dragons," she ordered. Tom Brady grinned. The dragons were his idea. Human-built fighters that were small enough to avoid most alien weapons, but fast enough to get inside the Council formations. Each one carried a pilot who had trained specifically for suicide missions. Captain Joe Parker led the Dragon Squadron personally. His voice came over the comm as his fighters dove into the enemy fleet. "For Earth! For humanity! For Jake Morrison!" The dragons tore through the Council formations like bullets through paper. Most of them were destroyed within minutes. But they took dozens of enemy ships with them. "Enemy fleet is pulling back," Tom reported. "They're trying to regroup." Katie nodded. They had won the first round, but this was far from over. The Council still had thousands of ships, and they would adapt to human tactics eventually. "Status on our losses?" she asked. "Minimal," Amy replied. "We've lost maybe 50 ships total. The defense grid is holding." "And the enemy?" "Over 800 ships destroyed or disabled," Tom said with satisfaction. Katie allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe they could actually win this. Then the alarm started sounding. "What is it?" Katie demanded. Captain Foster's face was pale as he read his displays. "Long-range sensors are detecting another fleet approaching, twice as large as the first one." Katie felt her heart sink. 6,000 ships. Even with all their preparations, Earth couldn't survive an assault from 6,000 enemy vessels. "Time to arrival?" she asked quietly. 18 hours, Foster replied. Katie looked around the command center at the faces of her staff. They all knew what those numbers meant. Earth was doomed. But then Amy White spoke up from her communications station. "Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet." "From the Council?" Katie asked. Amy shook her head, a smile spreading across her face. "No, ma'am. It's from the Free Worlds Coalition. Admiral Marcus Webb commanding." The main screen lit up with the face of a human officer Katie recognized from the academy. "Katie," Marcus said with a grin. "Sorry we're late. We had to pick up some friends along the way." Behind Marcus, Katie could see alien faces, dozens of different species, all wearing the insignia of the Free Worlds Coalition. "How many ships, Marcus?" Katie asked, hardly daring to hope. 6,000 and counting, Marcus replied. "Turns out when you give people a chance to fight for their freedom, they show up in large numbers." Katie looked back at the tactical display. The Council fleet was trapped between Earth's defenses and the largest liberation fleet in galactic history. Commander Thex had come to destroy humanity's homeworld. Instead, he had walked into the trap that would end the Galactic Council forever. The real battle was about to begin. Colonel Pete Jackson stood on the bridge of the captured Zorvac battleship Dominant Force, studying the alien control systems with fascination. It had taken his boarding team less than an hour to figure out how to operate the massive ship, and now they were using it against its former owners. "How are we doing this?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim, who was sitting at what used to be the Zorvac navigation station. "Their technology is completely different from ours." Pete smiled as he watched. Human technicians rewiring alien systems. That's the thing about humans, Sarah. We're good at figuring things out. The truth was more complex than Pete was letting on. For decades, human scientists had been reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could find. Crashed. Scout ships, abandoned equipment, even garbage left behind by alien visitors. All of it had been studied, analyzed, and understood. Dr. Rachel King, the fleet's xenotechnology specialist, was working at a console that would have taken a Zorvac engineer years to master. "Their systems are actually quite simple," she explained to Pete. "They rely on brute force rather than efficiency. Once you understand the basic principles, it's easy to improve on them." On the main screen, Pete could see the rest of his captured Aya fleet. 5 Zorvac warships, 3 Nethran trade vessels, and 2 ships from species he couldn't even identify. All of them were now flying human flags and carrying human crews. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Torres," reported communications. "Officer Dan Miller." The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Pete could see the bridge of Torres's flagship, which was also a captured alien vessel. "Pete, good work on the Vega system," Torres said. How are your new ships working out? Better than our own in some ways, Pete replied honestly. The aliens build everything oversized and over-engineered. Once we figured out how to operate them efficiently, we found we could get twice the performance they were getting. Torres nodded. Same here. Intelligence reports that the Council is completely confused by our tactics. They can't understand how we're operating their own ships better than they do. The reason was simple, though the aliens would never understand it. Humans had spent their entire history taking things apart and putting them back together better. From the first stone tools to the most advanced computers, humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to understand and improve on existing technology. "What's our next target?" Pete asked. "That's what I'm calling about," Torres replied. "We're changing strategy. Instead of hit-and-run attacks, we're going to start taking and holding territory." Pete raised an eyebrow. "That's a big shift. Are we ready for sustained operations?" "More ready than the Council thinks," Torres said with a grim smile. "Show him, Rachel." Dr. King activated a holographic display that showed Council space divided into colored zones. "We've been analyzing their supply lines and communication networks," she explained. "The Council controls the galaxy through 12 major hub systems. If we can take those systems, we can cut their empire in half." Pete studied the display. "Those systems are heavily defended. With their own technology," Torres pointed out. "Technology we now understand better than they do." The plan was audacious, but Pete could see the logic. The Council had ruled for so long through overwhelming force that they had never learned to fight a real war. Their ships were powerful but slow. Their tactics were rigid and predictable. Their commanders were used to enemies who either surrendered immediately or were crushed by superior numbers. Humanity was neither surrendering nor being crushed. "There's something else," Torres continued. "We're starting to get help. The main screen split to show a new face. An alien that looked like a cross between a dolphin and an octopus. Its skin was blue-green, and it had large, intelligent eyes. This is Ambassador Reef of the Aquari Republic," Torres explained. "Their system was conquered by the Council 15 years ago. Reef spoke in accented but clear English. My people have been waiting for someone to challenge the Council's rule. When we saw your attacks, we knew the time had come to act." "How many ships can you provide?" Pete asked directly. 300 vessels, Reef replied. "They are not as advanced as Council ships, but they are fast and our crews know these systems well." Pete exchanged glances with Dr. King. 300 ships would more than double their fleet size. "What do you want in return?" Pete asked. He had learned not to trust promises of free help. "Freedom," Reef said simply. "The Council took our worlds, enslaved our people, and forced us to work in their factories. We want our independence back. And you think we can give that to you?" Reef's large eyes seemed to brighten. "You killed Council soldiers with their own weapons. You captured their ships and turned them against their makers. You broadcast the execution of their diplomats across the galaxy. Yes, I think you can give us our freedom." Torres made the decision quickly. "Welcome to the Alliance, Ambassador. We'll need your ships at the Proxima Centauri system in 72 hours. As the transmission ended, Pete felt the weight of what they were doing settling on his shoulders. This had started as revenge for Jake Morrison's murder. Now it was becoming something much larger, a galactic revolution. "Pete," Dr. King said, quietly, "there's something else you need to know." She activated another display, this one showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. 7 more species have contacted us in the last 48 hours, she said. They're all asking the same thing. How can they join the fight against the Council? Pete read through the reports. Species that had been conquered, enslaved, or simply oppressed by Council rule were reaching out to humanity. Some offered ships, others offered intelligence, still others offered safe harbors for human forces. My God, Pete whispered. We're not just fighting a war. We're leading a rebellion. The Council thought Jake's execution would frighten everyone into submission, Dr. King said. Instead, it showed the galaxy that someone was finally willing to fight back. Pete looked at the tactical display showing the location of human forces throughout Council space. Red dots marked human ships, blue dots marked Allied vessels, and green dots marked systems that had declared independence from the Council. There were a lot more blue and green dots than there had been a week ago. Admiral Torres is right, Pete said finally. It's time to stop running and start taking territory. If we're going to lead a galactic revolution, we need to act like it. He turned to his communications officer. Dan, send a message to all human forces. We're moving to Phase 2. What's Phase 2? Asked Lieutenant Kim. Pete smiled, but there was no humor in it. We're going to show the Council what happens when you unite the galaxy against yourself. On ships throughout Council space, human commanders received their new orders. The hit-and-run attacks were ending. Now came the real war, a sustained campaign to break the Council's power and free every species they had oppressed. The aliens had expected humanity to be crushed quickly, like every other species that had dared to challenge Council rule. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that learned faster, adapted quicker, and fought harder than anything they had ever encountered. But more than that, they found themselves facing an enemy that other species actually wanted to help. For the first time in galactic history, a war against the Council was becoming a popular cause. Jake Morrison had died believing in the possibility of peace. His killers had thought his death would end humanity's dreams of equality. Instead, it had started a revolution that was spreading from star to star, carried by the simple idea that all intelligent species deserved freedom. The Council had ruled, through fear, for thousands of years. Now they were about to learn what it felt like to be afraid.